Hi. Hola. So, what are you not creating or sharing out of fear that if you do, you will be ridiculed? If we talk about being brave, we also need to talk about the fear, because it is the thing that gets in the way, which, to be clear, is not necessarily a bad thing, because I think it's not about just pushing the fear completely away and being completely brave in whatever way. I think fear often is there to tell us something important, and we need to be clear on in which areas of our life we want to be a little bit braver, and where it is maybe the brave thing to do to not share certain things, or to not show up fully, basically. So I think it's more complex than we often want to believe. It seems to be easier to just say, just take the plunge, just jump into the cold water. And I find that a really dangerous thing to do, because it can be that we end up pushing ourselves over the edge. As a consequence, we might even hide more because it was just too much. So in the context of showing up more, I think it's about having choice and seeing where maybe we started to edit ourselves so much out that we are feeling empty and burnt out in a way, because we are just performing to stay safe. And usually this has, I think nearly always has, to do with experiences from the past. You don't just all of a sudden get the idea, if I'm gonna show up more as my knowledgeable self, for example, as an expert in a certain area, that I will be ridiculed or humiliated. That doesn't just come out of nowhere, that kind of fear. Or the other way around, it can also happen that maybe you're someone who's always showing up very professionally and very put together all the time, and so it might be very scary to be a little bit more emotional, to be a little bit more vulnerable, and that would be the part where you think you might be ridiculed. And so let's face it, it's not about just saying, don't worry, because we have had an experience in the past where we showed up maybe as our knowledgeable self, or as our so-called vulnerable self or emotional self, and we were ridiculed. And so it was not safe, and our body does remember that, especially if it was maybe not just one incident, but many, many incidents, especially if it was with people who were very close to you, your family, for example, or it could have been best friends, or it could have been a teacher, or it could have been one event where you were ridiculed in front of a lot of people. I remember, actually, when I was studying social work, there was a department for theater and education, which I, of course, loved. And we were preparing for a show, and I was one of the people who always would show up on time, always. Many other people just didn't give a shit, but I always would. And I loved our teacher as well, until that moment where she thought she had to put an, example, because so many people were so unreliable and we had to rehearse. But I had at the time applied for a work camp which was my placement, and it would be in the States, and there was an introduction thing for the work camp I had to go to get that place. And so I didn't have any choice about that. And I said to her, listen, on this day, I have to leave a little bit earlier, an hour earlier, I think it was. Otherwise, I won't get my placement. And she basically said to me, you're not allowed to go. And so she put me in this impossible situation, but I had to leave. And I remember that we were all in a group, and I had warned her, I had told her I have to go. And so when it came to that, I got up and she humiliated me in front of everyone, you know, saying that I was not reliable and so on and so forth. And I remember I was leaving and I felt it was so unfair to do that to someone who was so dedicated to, you know, it was my passion to the show, to always showing up on time. It was this one exemption, you know, whereas other people got away with a lot of stuff who never were showing up, and they didn't get anything. I thought it was so unfair. But, you know, those kind of incidents, we don't forget about them. There is a consequence sometimes too. I mean, I think I did the right thing, but it came at a cost, and it felt very humiliating to have her do this in front of everyone. You know, she didn't just pull me to the side. And so I think, yeah, this is an example for me, and I'm sure I could come up with other examples, but I think it's those incidents, they stay with you. And so if you want to show up more, or make a point about something, or whatever it is where you're scared of being humiliated or ridiculed, this memories flash back, and they might even not come back like as like these exact memories, but more like a body feeling, you know, where you just feel this fear of that you're going to be shunned if you dare to actually, you know, come as your confident self and say, listen, I really am knowledgeable in this area, believe it or not, because you might have had the experience that others put you down because they could not live with you being so empowered because it made them feel bad. And so some of us learned better shrink yourself to make others feel better. So I think it is a complex subject, and it takes real bravery to break out of this, and we need to do it in slow, gentle steps, because if we don't, we are so terrified, and we might maybe do it, but it feels so terrifying to us. It's like a re-traumatizing ourselves. So I think that's not a good idea. It's kind of building that inner strength where we say, I will be fine, even if the outcome is a similar one to what I experienced before. And I think also we can't do it if we aren't willing to face up to these awful, difficult feelings of being ridiculed and humiliated. It's kind of like the bravery is in, okay, I'm gonna create something, maybe do a video or something about where I'm knowledgeable as an example, and I am willing for it to not get the response I'm hoping for. I'm willing to face up to those feelings again, and not just willing, but I'm also able to cope with them. I think that kind of needs to be there. We can't just jump into it. We need to find that little step where we say, okay, I can, with a little bit of that, I can deal with it. You know, I can try a little bit. It's maybe if you're learning a new language, you're not expecting yourself to immediately learn everything. You just start with a few words and you repeat them. And I think it's incredibly important, if we want to be braver, to do it gently at the same time, even though it might sound like a contradiction, because if we don't do that, we might actually have the opposite effect of what we want it to be. So yes, we want to break out of those things that kept us small, but we need to do it gently and bravely at the same time. So what is it you would like to create or share or show up as, but you're so scared that you will be ridiculed? Maybe you share it with me. I would love to hear. Your creative rebel, Anja. Ciao.